I'm Kristy and I'm the Head of Strategy at EQ, and today I'm going to be talking about thinking about beyond the interface, and so designing systems instead of screens or interfaces. So my background is in design, but I'm quite passionate, I don't know why, about data, and so just recently I've been thinking about what goes on behind the visuals and how we can make our systems smarter for our users. So today I'm going to be talking about the idea, then we're going to go through the problem with that idea, then I'm going to give you the solution, and then I'm going to give you some practical tips, and then towards the end, there's the end. So the first part of the talk, which is the idea, is Walkmans, modals, systems and outcomes. So my prediction is that the carefully crafted interfaces of today will soon become the Walkmans of tomorrow. So loved for a moment, but quickly replaced by something more powerful, more connected, and more invisible. And we've spent decades building screens. Interfaces have been our canvas, and we've gotten really good at it. We've been building buttons, curved corners, drop shadows, and pixel-perfect designs, carefully optimized and crafted. But we're standing at a turning point where AI and multimodal technologies are changing how people interact with the world. And instead of navigating through endless screens, people expect systems that anticipate, automate, and adapt. And this means our job as technologists is ever evolving, and it's no longer just about making beautiful screens, it's about designing systems that work with minimal effort from the user. And I'm not alone in that thought either. So across industries, leaders are recognising that this is the case, and they're starting to thinking about what those smarter systems might look like. So a quote from David Weston, who's the corporate VP at Microsoft. He has said that a future version of Windows will interact in a multimodal way, and the world of mousing around and typing will feel alien to us. So I find that that's pretty interesting, considering that Microsoft is the original window, and they're all starting to think about what's going on behind the screen. So you might not know what multimodal means. Basically, it just means more than one way to input or output something. So you're not relying on a single channel like a screen. So you could be thinking about voice. You can talk, or it can hear what the system can hear what you're saying, or it can talk to you. It can watch your gestures when you're doing things. It can see what you see. It can show you things like a screen. That's still a valid modal. And then it can also, my favourite is when it notices when something changes, like your location or the time, or potentially some previous behaviours that you've demonstrated over and over again. So also, what is a system? Well, a system is a set of interconnected components, a modal, a database, a service designed to work in sync. But a smarter system anticipates and delivers outcomes seamlessly with almost minimal effort from the user. And we already have some examples of that today. So if we think about Apple Watch and fall detection, if you take a fall, the watch detects and calls emergency services, letting them know your location, and you don't even have to touch a single screen. Another example is the digital boarding pass with your smartwatch, where your boarding pass updates automatically if the gate changes and vibrates on your wrist when boarding starts, and you can also scan your watch at the gate as well. So a watch is a small screen, but it's a different way of receiving information. The screen is still a relevant mode, of course. We're not going to ditch the screen, but it's just one of many, and we need to start thinking about other things and not defaulting to screens as the solution for the best tool for the job. So the problem with that is the silos, the lotion, the cheap fuel, and I'll talk more about that later. So we've been building in silos for so long that our systems are disconnected, leaving users to do most of the heavy lifting. And how that occurred is basically in Web 2.0, where we were developing user-generated content. We all had our own budgets, we had our own departments, and we all had our own ideas of what we wanted our content to be. And so all of us started building products without thinking about how they might relate to another system. So if we want to get to Web 4.0, which is that intelligent web, where all the systems are talking to each other, we need to start working out how to connect those systems. So without smarter systems, multimodal is nothing more than a fancy skin, not a transformation. Is there anyone here that hasn't seen the movie Silence of the Lambs? Can I get a hand raise? Right. Silence of the Lambs in 1 minute. So Clarice Starling, she's an FBI agent and she's hunting for a guy named Buffalo Bill. She gets help from Hannibal Lecter, but Buffalo Bill essentially kidnaps women, makes them rub lotion all over their body to loosen their skin so that he can use that skin to make a fancy suit. I would recommend it, it's a great film. So with that in mind, without smarter systems, multimodal is nothing more than a fancy skin, not a transformation. So let me show you what a fancy skin looks like. So it puts the modal on the system. So a fancy skin. In the olden days, the before times, before the internet, you would have to do this with paper. But now we're coming up with building all of these modals. So one mode would be to constantly check your fuel gauge. This is if you want to get some cheap fuel on your route, by the way. That's what this journey is. You'd constantly keep checking your fuel gauge. And I've given it a 1, but I think we all know that in a 2-week period, you might check it like 50 times every time you get in the car. So I'm being conservative with that estimate. To actually open your phone and use Google Maps or Google Search is another 4. Then you get to the Smart Fuel website, that's another 1. And then you can redirect to Google Maps and then you find the route that you like and then you select the direction and then you hook that into your car. That's your smart system. And that's basically 9+ steps. For 1 outcome, 2 outcomes if you count my frustrations. So a smarter way to do that would be your car knows that you're low on fuel. It uses another system to find out where the smartest, the cheapest fuel is. It tells you, it knows what route you're going on. It recommends what fuel station to go to. It's the cheapest, it's the closest, and all you have to do is say the word yes. So that would be a smarter system. So the solution to all of those disconnected systems. Our mindset needs to shift to there is no spoon. Has anyone not seen the movie The Matrix? Yes. Okay. Here's the Matrix in a minute. So there's Neo, and he lives in a computer simulation, and Morpheus, he pulls him out of that because he's the chosen one. And for Neo to work out what the Matrix is, he goes and sees this little kid, and this little kid says, try not to bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realise the truth. There is no spoon. So with that in mind, in the matrix of design, the real question is, does the button even need to exist? So I think some of us are familiar with human-centered design. That's where the user is at the centre of the experience. You have a user journey, a UI, and a click. That click is the spoon. But if you want to start getting into system-centered design, it's all about the service, the system, and then potentially whatever mode of interface you want to interact with. And that's the matrix. Okay, so here's some practical ways. This is a lot, and I hope you're all ready, because there's a lot of information coming your way, and it's probably going to be delivered like this, fast. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you want to start investigating a system or a service is to kick off the project. And you really need to have a data engineer, a designer, and a developer on the team. That's the core team. There are, of course, supporting roles, but you need to make sure that the data engineer and the developer are part of the discovery. Because if you start with design and you hand over to developers or to data, some decisions may have already been made, or we may not have looked under the hood because we're basically trying to work out how does that data flow. So if you don't have a data engineer, it's going to be almost impossible to know what that is. So make sure you have the right team involved. And then you need to align on the goals. So I have designed a system before, so I'm going to be using that example. We were asked to do a digital transformation for an electrician's company. Basically, they wanted us to build them an app to do electrical tasking of jobs. So how an electrician would receive a job and also timesheet their job and do their daily tasks. So that was the task. It was not efficient. It had poor visibility. The data was like multiple double handling of data, so it was inaccurate in places. It wasn't scalable. It was really relying on one person, and also it was really disconnected. So I'm going to reference this example quite a bit. So once you've formed the team, it's time to map the service. So we first started out by using a service design blueprint. I'm not going to go into the depths of what service design blueprints are, but if you look online or scan this QR code, you'll see lots of information on service design blueprints. But essentially, you want to map the front stage, that's what the electrician's doing, and the touch points, whether they be digital or non-digital touch points. The backstage, which is what's the administrator doing, what's their steps and what are their touch points, both digital and non-digital. And then you also want to be looking at what's the system doing. So you can see here the system's doing nothing. It's all offline. So once you've mapped that out, you keep mapping, and that's when you start getting a connected system. And you keep mapping all the way back until you find that first data entry point and the end data entry point, and don't stop until you've reached it. So what we uncovered was the system was extremely slow, and that's why at the top in that second row there's like time on task. It was really slow for them to get from scoping a job all the way to reviewing the report from that job, so time's important. And there were so many errors, and that was because of the double handling of data. It was disconnected, paper-based, very siloed and reliant on certain users. So because that wall of post-its is too much for the human brain to consume, I've kind of simplified it here. But if you don't map the end-to-end service, you're still going to be helping or sort of making sure that that disconnected system still continues. So you're trying to break that cycle. So that's why we want to find out where the real opportunity is. So if you don't go back far enough, you might not be solving the right problem. So here they've asked us to focus on scheduling a job and receiving and completing a job. But actually, by that time, the user had already inputted that same data into the system 5 separate times. So if we want to make that system connected, we have to get to the point where that data is entered in the first time, which leads me to what is the actual scope of this project was the scoping of the task, not the scheduling of the job. So this is pretty simple. Like you could probably sit in a chair and think, well, that's obvious. But like if you had a more complex system, you might need to go back to find where the starting point is. So yeah, at this point, you've got the entire service mapped out. You know where the first point of data entry is, because once that data is in, that's when you can start using the system to do interesting things with it, which reduces all of that double handling of information. So you've mapped out the service. It's now time to get the system to start doing some of the thinking for you. So there are 4. There might be grey areas of what does that system, like other ways that a system can help out, but essentially for this talk, automate, anticipate, augment, or generate. So across that service, you want to see what things can be automated, anticipated, augmented, and generated. So what does automate look like? These are things like repetitive admin tasks, or workflow triggers, or scheduling reminders. So once you see that in your service design blueprint, you can say this can be automated by the system. So data entry is a good example of that. The next one is the anticipate. So that's for location-based triggers, usage patterns, things that happen on repeat, and maintenance needs. So you'll be able to say that this piece of machinery would need to be updated soon and send a message, or if your route changes on the way to work, it'll tell you that you need to go and do a faster route because there's an accident over there. So that's your anticipate. The third one is the augment, and that's when it starts to analyse things and do some interpretations. There's also recommendations. So if any of you have smart lights that turn on at 6 p.m. or something like that, that's the system augmenting your home and making your life easier with some of that decision making. And then there's sort of that real AI stuff where it starts generating content for you. So if you ever use a tool that recommends words for you to submit, that like for content and communication, that's where you start using AI, predictions and forecasts, and then getting that creative design work going as well with all of those tools that are currently doing visuals for us. So once you've mapped out your system, you would just go systematically through and say, which ones of these needs to be anticipated, automated, generated, and the other one is, yes, automated, anticipated, augmented, generated, yeah, so do that. And then you also have to work out what is important to you. You may not make any savings by turning something into an automated process, so you would want to have a look at that return on investment. Maybe it's not costing the business anything to do, to keep it as a sort of manual task, but maybe it is. And if you think about the cost of that task over a period of time, potentially the value of automating it is important. So just sort of like go through, you might not want to do all of them at once. In fact, it's kind of impossible, so you want to prioritise those things. So I would just prioritise all of the different things to see which is important to me, which thing needs to be changed straight away and which one can wait. And then you can prioritise that into your backlog, create a roadmap of all those tasks. So the things at the top are the things that the human still needs to do, and the things at the bottom are all the tasks that the system can do. And once you get the system to do it, you're improving your accuracy as well. So think about the cost of that, because if you're doing invoicing and there's 5 different input points for that same data, which is, you're going to have increased human error, maybe it's not just time on task, but actually people getting the invoicing wrong is also a cost. So maybe that would be something that you prioritise that as an important reason to automate something. So yeah, the stuff at the top still needs to be done by a human. I think eventually, once you trust the robots, you might be able to let the robot do it completely. But things like scoping a job, you would definitely want a person to be talking to a person to find out what needs to happen. Then the reviewing of that job and approving the job, that would probably be the one that after I'd had that system up and running for a while and I saw that there were 0 errors with that recommendation from the system, that might be something I automate as well. But right now, when you automate that job, when you approve that job, someone is sent to do a job and a whole bunch of materials are ordered as well. So you might not want to rely on a system to do that. You might want to have a person checking that out because there is a cost to that. It doesn't have to be a lot, like the person could just review it and the system can give some recommendations on things that look a little bit different. But yeah, you would want a human to do that. And then there's also the physical delivery of materials. I don't think we're at a point right now where there's robots flying around dropping materials off. And then the actual doing of the work. So again, I don't know how the system could fix an electrical job. It has to be done by a human. And then the viewing of the report, which is that last point, that one would, I guess if you didn't want to have a look at the report, you wouldn't have to, but if you were a business owner, you might want to look at how things are going. So that's basically it. That's how you would prioritise what the system does and what the system doesn't do. And then you want to start taking all of those things that are for the human and identify what can another mode of sort of interface do with those steps? So you're not just defaulting straight away to wireframes, you're actually going in and saying, getting creative and saying, for this task here, could another mode do the work? So yeah, get creative. And choose the right tool for the job. So is it glasses? Is it gesture? Is it screen? It's still a valid mode. Or is it context switching or listening to you talk, something like that. So in this instance, I thought I won't go through every single one, although I think I'm really good on time. How much time do I have?
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time. I cannot believe how fast that was. We can go past some things if it was too fast. We can talk about... Huh? We'll go through the 107, the stuff that didn't make it in. So if you were scoping a job, like imagine this, so an electrician goes to a house and instead of bringing out a tape measure, puts on some glasses, scans the area and actually starts getting dimensions of the space to do measurements. And instead of like putting in a form, it can potentially just say, you know, start job, and you can have a conversation with a system that asks you some questions. It can also use your location. So if you're at the job and you start the scoping of that job, potentially where you are and the time that you're in, all of that information can start being pre-populated into the system, so you don't need to add that in as well. So you could potentially scope a job without touching an interface at all, and then the electrician just has to go with some smart glasses in, and that would be the way that you could do that without an interface. The last one, which is the receiving and completing a job. So I was thinking, what if an electrician walked into the depot, their watch vibrated, it said, go to car 57 for your next job. You get in the car, the destination's already in the car, and you start driving, and as you're driving, it started telling you about the scope of work. When you get to the job, you put your glasses on, and potentially you're getting some support as you're doing the work, or if it sees anything that there's something dangerous that you're about to do, it could probably alert you. I've also had electricians come to my house and they've had to call a more senior person for some extra information. Potentially that could be eliminated because the system could just talk directly into the ear. And then I thought what would be cute as well is when you drove to that person's house to do the work, the timesheet started straight away, and when you left, the timesheet stopped. So you don't even have to do timesheeting anymore, and that feeds directly through to invoicing. So that's my 50 slides in 2 minutes. I don't know, I did it real quick, sorry. You can go have a drink or something, but nothing I've shown you belongs in the future. It's all ready, and the only thing that is standing in our way is our mindset. We need to stop defaulting to screens, and that's a really hard thing for me to say considering that I'm a visual designer, but I think that if we want to unlock the experience and make them work better and feel better, be simpler, be smarter, and ultimately these types of systems are way more human because it allows us the freedom to just be. We don't have to be strapped to a desk or in front of a laptop or something like that. So I think that technology should start disappearing in the background to help us to do our work and not be the thing that's in the foreground. So that is my talk. I don't know what happened from time. I thought I wouldn't make it, but yeah, thanks.
Do you want to take questions?
Yeah? I think we've got an hour for questions.
We've got about 20 minutes, so yep, we've got a question. Off the back.
Thanks. Hey, great
Hi.
talk.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier on, once you've identified an option that you wanted to then simplify or streamline in that process, you'd go about assessing a return on investment of it. But you didn't elaborate any further.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering how you would normally go about doing that.
Yeah. Well, my favourite thing to measure value is Google's heart metrics. So that's happiness. If your employees are more happy, they'll probably do the work faster. Engagement is if you're trying to get more people to if we use the electrician thing, you want more people to join your company, you want more engagement. A is something, retention, and then time on task as well. What is A? Anyone in the audience? It'll come to me. Anyway, not important. Time on task is probably, it all relates back to money. So you would want to see how long that task took, and then you times that by the person's wage, and you times that by the year. And then if you're thinking that the replacement automated task is going to be around for 5 years, you times that by the 5 years, and then you work out actually what is the period of time before I get a return on investment on this automated task. Is that kind of the question? Okay, good. Yes. Adoption. A.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was very good. I guess for me, looking at what was talked about, did you, with the product that you were talking about just a moment ago, did you get any sort of like experience with like, I guess like stuff like CarPlay? Because you're talking about cars and stuff like that, or Apple Watches, because I'm definitely in agreement of this concept of like the multimodal or the multifaceted way to look at how we interact with technology to, you know, do a job or kind of like complete any task. Like we look at the idea of like ordering groceries, for example, and our fridge starting to understand what's always inside of our fridge and going off and ordering those things like that. But I am very fascinated, I guess, in the CarPlay aspect of like, have you had any experience in that area? Because I know like Apple has made the whole CarPlay thing. I'm wondering if you know any additional stuff about that? Sorry.
No, I think that generally most people are defaulting to screens. I did a little bit of work with West Australian Police, and they were doing a lot of stuff with their CarPlay stuff. But I think it's pretty, even though it's been around for so long, it's pretty, I think it's a bold thing to not do a website at all, and you just default to one product. And I feel like if you're going to do CarPlay, you've got to like double down on that, but like people have still got their feet in both camps. And that's what I guess the talk is as well, is to maybe talk about the benefits of only doing it in the appropriate tool, and that you don't need to be across like a mobile app and a website and a car. Like you can just go the car and be brave enough to do it that way. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in doing things in CarPlay, but I'd love that. I'd love us to start thinking about the different modes instead of defaulting to a website. Ben.
We still got 50 minutes.
How much time? 30 minutes? Far out, that was quick. 15 minutes.
Hiya. You talked a lot about like using technology and multimodal, and talk was really, really good. When do you ever like sometimes go with all these situations and go, maybe pen and paper is actually the best solution for this problem? And what kind of situations do you find that just becomes true all the time?
Yeah, and I find it with websites, quite frankly. Sometimes when I see like the cost of building a website based on usage and stuff like that, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, that's going to be a really long time before that person gets the return on that investment. So I'm already seeing that with some of the applications online right now. So absolutely. So you do have to work out what your return on investment is and whether or not it's going to save you money. I actually think you're more likely to save money by automating a task that is in a workflow than you are in potentially doing something else that wasn't business related. So I already see that sometimes things potentially aren't worth the money, but also what's the cost if you don't do them? Potentially you go out of business, and that's bad as well. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, it's big, loud. I have a question on the mindset. So when you work with clients, like for example, the electrician, how do you introduce a shifty mindset in some traditional businesses, or let's say sometimes happen stakeholders that they're used to spreadsheets, and
Yeah.
you need to get the buy-in from the operational team and then the leadership. If you were to give a piece of advice, how do you start to approach this kind of conversations so that you can automate easily the repetitive tasks?
Yeah. It was super easy in this instance because it always comes down to money. Like, you can save money always. So they had originally just do that one task. It didn't take us much longer to do the whole process. So that was fairly easy. And then when we started saying, you're entering the data 8 times, it's taking this much time. If you calculate by that person's wage and the bottlenecks and your inability to grow, like, it was a really strong argument for them to focus on the start of the data input. We also calculated that it was the same price to build one product that completed everything and had a lot of systems doing the work than it was for them to potentially build one product this time and then in a year go and build an estimating tool. And like, we all got it done in one time. We used Power Apps for that one, and so it took about 8 weeks for that developer to do the whole thing using that. Like, you would want to use different tools, etc., but for that data entry bit where we got it at scoping, then it automated to estimating, and then it also sent the ordering of materials as well. It wasn't even things that we were thinking of, but that was the beauty of having that data engineer in there. I think if it had been just a design team, we would have been a little bit frightened and not been encouraged to try and simplify those data flows, but the whole way through, it was almost like having a heckler. We were designing stuff and the data engineer's like, you don't need that, and it was just like moving, like, he was just like moving data around like it was liquid. It was actually really beautiful. Shout out to James Baverstock. So that's why it's important. So we could basically prove that for the same cost of doing tasking, he could do his whole workflow, and he was a small business owner as well, so he couldn't deny that that was a great piece of value right there. So as long as you can prove the value, and I think we can all agree that sounded pretty good, like, to get all of the whole system digitised in 8 weeks using Power Apps, it was pretty cool, and Power BI. Yeah.
Hi, Kristy.
Hi.
Thank you for it was a good slideshow. We made it through.
Fast. I was like, 51, they're going to be here till 12 p.m, but I forgot that I talk really fast.
I'm going to read this because I wrote it down. In your time working in the industry, have you found potential clients reluctant to move towards integration of multimodal solutions due to cost or other concerns, and how do you pitch it to them and help them see value in that?
I think that it's all, like, I think people are they're always wanting to do an app, or they're like a mobile app or a web app, so that's kind of easy. In fact, there was a period of time where everyone wanted to have an app, so that's interesting. I think that I think that's kind of referenced before in a previous question. It's just like, we're not thinking about it yet. We're just defaulting to those safe modes. And I think as technologists, it's up to us to start proposing new ways, and it's way overdue. Like, we've all had these devices and smart cars and everything for a really long time. So the fact that we keep wireframing on desktop, it's kind of, I think we just need to sort of encouraging our clients of better ways of doing it. Depends on the product, of course. I did a little bit of work for Woodside, which was a digital twin. So that was kind of an interesting thing where you had a plant that was digitised and you could see how everything was working. You're still using a screen at that point, but like, I wonder how interesting. Well, they used to have robots as well walking around, so it was pretty cool. That was probably the most advanced project that I've ever worked on. And Ben worked on that with me. And that Ben there. And did you, Tones? No. Yeah.
Cool. Hi, welcome, and thank you for the presentation. It was really amazing. My question is, so with Web 2.0, we've built up like a set of expectations that users have, like responsive design and really accessible and, quick is the big one. Do you think those expectations are going to evolve in the multimodal world? Are they going to change, and how so?
Yeah, I think I'm just getting to that slide. It's all switched off. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I think that, and tying into that millennial or the Gen Z talk that I just went to, where the users are expecting things to be fast, like people are only going to get more frustrated with this kind of scenario. So we're going to have to start getting a lot smarter if we want to keep competitive. Like potentially, if I had the choice between two cars and one car was super smart and helping me find petrol and the other one was making me do this, I might buy the previous car. So to be competitive and to keep our customers and users happy, we're going to start having to work a lot harder and a lot smarter so that the people using these things don't have to do anything at all.
Probably take 2 more questions.
Yeah.
2 more. Anyone? I'll give you a free water bottle. Sorry, I was joking.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. So my question was, I think right now, a lot of, because currently I'm UX designer, more graduate one, so, and I've been looking at jobs and just the industry in general, especially in Australia, and we, of course, mostly focus on web and app technologies, and you've been talking about, bringing more multimodality into more of our solutions in future, which is something I've also always been interested in, but how do we find opportunities to practice that as well, or, immerse ourselves in that, and be more familiar with it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think obviously reading and getting online and looking at all of those, all of that information is there for you to start doing it. For this talk, was going down such a rabbit hole of I thought it was going to be about this, and then 2 months later, 107 slides later, there was just so much information out there that I could start, I was just following the lead and what happens after this and that and that. So this research piece was pretty interesting. So I guess was the question how do you find out about multimodal and smart systems? Is that kind of?
I think it's probably how you get experience to get into the industry.
Yeah. Well, if you're designing, obviously, you can just start designing these things. You can do your own small projects, put that stuff online, write blogs, all of those sorts of things, starting off a small project with someone. I know a person that has built their own personal app for exercise and things like that. So if you don't have something from your work and you're really passionate about it, you might need to want to do that in your own time to get that experience. But if you see the opportunity within a project, just ask yourself, could this be done a better way? Does it need to be a form? If someone's wearing safety gloves, should they be, and they're doing electrical work, should they be using their hands right now? Or could we have a look at what glasses can do or something else? So I guess in a way, it's just you just have to start looking for it, but it's all there waiting for you.
Last question.
Thank you for the chat. The talk. My question is, in the beginning with this project you had over there, there would have been a lot of talk to understand the problem first. What sort of framework or tool do you use to first understand the problem and then map it out into its flow?
Well, that service design blueprint was the thing, and wherever it may be. So definitely use the service design blueprint. That's the thing that you map out the front stage and the back stage. And what was really interesting is I wasn't the designer on this project, I was the lead on it. And the design and the developer and the data person were mapping it out, and after about a day they said, this isn't a tasking job, this is a scoping job, because we can see that the amount of times that data's been entered across the way, and it's a ridiculous amount of paper-based activities. So as soon as you start mapping, you'll start to see what needs to change. And I feel like most good designers have a level of OCD, and they're just not going to put up with entering data 5 times, especially that same set of data in all different Excel spreadsheets and things like that. So as soon as you start to feel uneasy, you know that's the thing that needs to change. Is that helpful? Does that look easy? Like you could do it in an Excel spreadsheet, like if you wanted to. I prefer Miro or paper-based, especially if you've got like the data people putting the flows in and the developers looking at the system and things like that. But it's very much a war room situation where you're doing things. You could take that and then digitize it so you can start looking at where are the things that need to change the quickest, where do the most errors happen, where do the most time sinks happen, where is there a reliance on that one person to just sit at their desk because they're a blocker if they don't approve something. So that they're all the things that you're looking out for. But yeah, I don't think there's any easy way to do this, and at this moment I'm kind of happy about that, because it means that the design team still has a job, because I don't think a robot can do it just yet. They need to go out and talk to people, find out where all the issues are, and that can't be done by AI just yet, I don't think. So still employed.
Cool, thank you. Do you want to let everyone know how they can reach you online if they have questions?
Yeah, I actually don't do a lot of, I'm on TikTok, but no one wants to go there. Where was it? All right, I'm getting there, just wait. This was the slowest part of the talk, me finding my contact details. Well, there. I'm OG on Instagram, so I've got like a really small, that's just Ksash, at LinkedIn, sorry, not Instagram. But yeah, you can just reach out to me, connect, or chat to me in LinkedIn, but that's the only place you'll find me, because I'm recluse.